Hi, academic writing students. I wanted to go over the research progress document instructions. So in week 7, anytime during the week, I want you to create a document that keeps track of your research progress. I'd like you to use Google Docs and share it with me through email. You can email me the link to your Google Doc and use the subject line Research Progress Document. So on your progress document, I'd like you to include your research questions. You already posted these on the forum, but go ahead and include them here as well. And at least 3 credible sources and some notes about each. I definitely want you to include the URL for each source. So when you're thinking about whether a source is credible, what I mean by that for this class is that it was peer-reviewed in some way. So things published on news websites go through an editorial board before they're published. Somebody fact-checks those. Things from reputable organizations are also fact-checked, so things from Pew or Harvard Med or other credible organizations. Also, any scholarly research article is credible. It's gone through a peer review process. If you have any doubts about the sources being credible, you can email me or you can just put a note in the Google Doc and I will write back to that note. So do your best to find 3 sources that are credible. Just a reminder, for your final draft of the research essay, you need at least 5 sources, but you can have more. And at least 4 of those need to be trustworthy and credible. But you can also use a few less credible, interesting sources to count as evidence, or maybe they really capture the current debate around an issue, or maybe you want to include them as a source to write against. So something that represents public opinion but maybe is biased, and you want to cite that and mention that to kind of help your reader understand what the current conversation is, totally fine. So I want to go over some tips for keeping track of your sources. So for larger projects like this one, it's really great if you come up with some sort of strategy to be really organized, and that's going to save you time in the long run. So here are my tips. Keep all of your links and notes for sources in their own separate document. This is what we're creating with the research progress document. And then for each link, each URL, each source, have some notes. You might paste in the abstract or have some quotes that you plan to use. You want to include enough detail so you can look back at that document and remember what that source covered. And then you can click on the URL and review the source as needed. I also recommend that you don't leave creating your APA citations until the very end, because this can be time consuming. And, we discussed a bit about not going down the research rabbit hole. It can be really tempting to read everything about your topic if you have a lot of curiosity, even if it's only kind of tangentially related, or maybe you know it's not really going to make it into your paper, but you're curious. So to save yourself time and to not go down the rabbit hole, I recommend at the end of your document just pasting in all those links, all the URLs for sources that look really interesting, but are probably not useful in terms of what you're writing about, and then you could just read those later. Don't bother with APA citations. So when you're thinking about including enough detail about each source, I wanted to give a couple examples of what that might look like. You might have the URL, the title. Type of source I think is really interesting. So is this a website? Is it a scholarly journal article? Is it a video? What kind of sources? And then the organization. And then maybe some notes, some quotes. You could just paste those in with page numbers if available, and your APA citation. If you include all that information, you're going to have a really good at a glance picture of what each of your sources is doing and how you might use that in your essay. Here's another example. You might have the URL, title, APA citation, quotes. Maybe you'll include some commentary about the source. This could be like, this source seems really interesting, but a little biased, or this is one of my non-credible sources that I'm going to argue against. So something like that. Earlier, I mentioned that you might want to include or paste in the abstract as a useful way to keep track of the content. So if your article has an abstract, that is a summary of the entire content of the article. This is something you're usually going to see with scholarly journals. So for example, looking at this journal article, we can see that it has an abstract right here, and I might just paste that in as a way to remind myself what the article covers, and this is just a useful way to stay organized. Cite as you go along. So, if you know you're going to use a source and you want to take a break from more rigorous activities, thinking and writing, then you can just click on the source and try to cite it with a citation generator. You could use our Writing Center handouts. You could look and see if your source has, if you find it on Google, if it has quotation marks. When you click on those, that usually will have an option for citing. Just as a reminder, we're using APA 7th edition, so make sure that you use the 7th edition of APA. All right, thank you for watching this short video.